The Tennessee Titans are trying to start a hot streak, while the Washington Commanders are trying to end a cold streak. Who will prevail? We'll discuss on this Crossover Thursday from the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in to another Crossover Thursday. It's week 13, Locked On Titans, Locked On Commanders. I am host of Locked On Titans, Tyler Rowland, here with the host of Locked On Commanders, David Harrison. Going to be breaking down this matchup with the biggest storylines for each team, some of the keys to victory for the teams in this game. Thank you for making Locked On Titans and Locked On Commanders your first listen each and every day. Do want to let you know that today's Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Of course, we're going to start with some of the big storylines in this game, and the Tennessee Titans coming off their best win of the season, a 32-27 upset over the Houston Texans. Obviously, I'm in the trenches every day with the Tennessee Titans, David, but what kind of questions might you have right now about the Tennessee Titans football team between two teams that really don't see each other very often?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think first and foremost, right, you have to ask the question. Everybody always says you are what your record says you are, but I feel like this Tennessee Titans team is not your average 3-win team. So, how much does that 3-win record demonstrate who the Titans are, and how much does it actually leave to be discovered for Commanders fans who haven't seen the Titans play?
Well, quite honestly, I know a lot of Titans fans will disagree with me, but I don't think the record is that far off of who they are. I think the Titans would maybe be 4-7. That Chicago Bears game in week 1, they were up 17. Levis does some really crazy stuff. The play that everyone probably remembers where he's basically fallen to his knees and he throws the ball to the sideline and it goes for a pick six. The Titans get a punt blocked in that game. Like that game in particular, I would say that the Tennessee Titans should have won. But the Jets game, they lost by 7. They got smoked by the Packers. Maybe if Brian Callahan plays Mason Rudolph instead of a hurt Will Levis in week 6, the Titans beat the Colts. But I really don't think it's that far off because the Titans have some serious issues that aren't just hidden. The right tackle situation, they're lacking some explosiveness at wide receiver right now, even though their number 2 wide receiver, NWI, is having a good season. And on defense, the pass rush, very inconsistent. And because of that, they haven't really had a lot of turnovers in most games. But on the other side of things, they make plays. The defense is very good. And the offense, now that Will Levis is healthy and kind of calmed down from that early season stretch where it was a meme every single week and making some of the dumbest plays that you've ever seen at any level of football, quite honestly. Now that they're just playing like normal football, they're a much better football team than they were early in the year in a lot of circumstances. So I think while the record is not as good as it should be, in my opinion, it's also not super far off from who they are as a team. But a lot of that may not matter going down the backstretch of this season and these final weeks of the year, because Will Levis is playing such better football and a young offensive line and a young offense with a lot of new pieces, including head coach Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan is a rookie head coach, and I think there are struggles that come with that. It's not like Dan Quinn, where he's a retread coach and he's done this before and he knows how I want to change things and what works and what doesn't. Brian Callahan's figuring out everything on the fly for being he wasn't even the play caller in Cincinnati. So not only is he developing as an offensive coordinator who's calling plays for the first time at the NFL level, he's developing as a head coach and how you want to handle guys in all phases of the football team. So with so much new with the Tennessee Titans and the issues that I talked about, it was only logical that they would have a slow start. And I predicted a slow start, maybe not quite as slow as it was for the Titans, but now they're definitely hitting their stride. And I think the second half of the season, Tennessee Titans are going to be very much different from the early season version of the Titans, but they still got to go out and prove it with wins. So we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that Will Levis, 1-2 in the last 3 games, right? Certainly not the way you want to go, but I know Will Levis has been playing better football over the last few games. So can you talk about kind of where he's gotten better, why that's happened, and how much of that is just Will Levis growing into his NFL, legs, and how much of that is the coaching staff helping out the young quarterback?
Well, I think the coaching staff is definitely helping out the young quarterback, but it's not so much with the play calling or, with the design. They're helping out Will Levis with philosophically behind the scenes what you need to do. Brian Callahan talked about it at Wednesday's press conference that they've told Will Levis, you don't need to worry so much about making the magic plays. Levis wants to play hero ball. He wants to hold the ball. He wants to drive it down the field. He never wants to play to end. He wants to avoid a sack. He wants to make a crazy flip and get it to a running back. And sometimes you just have to take your medicine to get better. And shout out to David being sick and, taking his medicine and making this show happen. I really appreciate that. But, it's funny how, and Brian Callahan laughed about this in the press conference, that once Will Levis stopped trying to do so much and just took what was there with the defense, then all of a sudden the magic plays did happen. It's like doing just a little bit less makes a little bit more. And I think that over the last 3 games, we've seen Will Levis complete 67% of his passes, 748 passing yards, 5 touchdowns against 3, you could say top 10 defenses. They're all top 11 in DVOA on defense with the Chargers, the Vikings, and then the Texans. So he's played basically the best 3-game stretch of his entire career against some of the very best defenses in the NFL. And hopefully that measured, calm, poised approach continues for Will Levis. And look, he had a pick 6 against the Texans that was a terrible throw and terrible decision. Sometimes he locks on to things and just doesn't see things correctly. He still takes a ton of sacks. His pressure to sack rate, if you get pressure on Levis, you're basically going to sack him because he doesn't get rid of the ball quick enough. He doesn't know how to evade that pressure. The pocket presence is not good, which is like a stark contrast to Jayden Daniels. You know what I mean? Who's very natural in the pocket and has great instincts. But overall, there are things to build off of. And again, he is playing his best football. And I think a lot of it has to do with his mentality and how the coaches are telling him, just to play more calmly. That's more important than anything they're doing schematically on the field.
Yeah, it was real interesting watching Will Levis on tape because it's almost like he not just wants to set his feet, he almost wants to plant his feet sometimes in the pocket, and it definitely leads to a much longer process from decision to throw and leads to some hits and some sacks, like you were saying. On the defensive side of things, though, where's the Tennessee Titans' defensive strength at?
Well, the strength is the defensive line. There's a saying in Tennessee, you do not run on the Tennessee Titans. Last week, a good run game in the Houston Texans. Joe Mixon's been great this year. 14 carries for 22 yards. The Titans aren't going to let you run the football. You got to beat them in the pass game. And with the quarterback run game, quite honestly, the Titans have struggled a little bit with mobile quarterbacks who can get out and run. And that's a concern for me. But the Titans defensive line led by all-world player Jeffrey Simmons and then rookie Tavondre Sweat. You just don't run on the Titans. It doesn't happen very often. And that's really the strength of the defense because they got a lot of backups in the secondary with a lot of injuries in the secondary. But then again, the Titans have the number 1 pass defense in the NFL. But again, I think a lot of that is built upon the fact that they stop the run. You're in a lot of 3rd and long situations, and it makes it easier for the defensive backfield to kind of hold things down. But we're going to turn the page, look at the Washington Commanders side of things as well. They're on a 3-game losing streak. What's causing that? How can they get out of it? David, one of the best that we have in the network. He's going to have some great answers for us. Excited to continue this crossover Thursday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, NFL fans, you can start the last third of the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's number 1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So you get a hunch in the middle of a game. You can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets on FanDuel. Make sure that you visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, David, let's continue today's crossover Thursday. It's Locked On Titans, Locked On Commanders. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Make sure to get subscribed, stay subscribed for the best coverage of your favorite team that you will find. And David, I hyped you up there at the end, but it's for good reason. You do some excellent work covering the Commanders. And that's why you're the perfect person to ask the question, why are the Commanders on a 3-game losing streak?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting kind of regression for the Washington Commanders. So there's a thing I have a background in animal training, right? And really in any type of training, there's something called spontaneous recovery. Is when you're working on a certain skill and you're working towards developing a preferred response or preferred behavior to a command or a signal or whatever, and you're making progress, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're right back to where you started for a day or so, and then you pick back up on that progress. That's essentially what we're seeing with the Washington Commanders in a sense, where earlier in the season, fans and even team members, Jeremy Reeves, after that Hail Mary against the Chicago Bears to win that game miraculously, was extremely emotional in the locker room. And he looked at a bunch of us in the media and he said, you guys know this team last year, this team 2 years ago, this team 3 years ago doesn't win this game. This team is different. And now we're kind of seeing situations where the Washington teams of old are doing, some of the habits are returning. What I mean by that is not playing complementary football. And look, every team in the NFL understands the importance of playing complementary football, but that's the opposite of what Washington is doing right now. Look at just last week. Anytime the defense stood up, the offense couldn't do anything with it. I mean, you get 3 possessions in Dallas territory in the first half to start the game, and you produce 3 points, a punt, and an interception, right? You can't do that. Then offensively, they come out in the second half, run right down the field, go right down the field on the Dallas Cowboys, put a touchdown on the board, first touchdown of the game, take a lead. And now you're kind of thinking like, okay, here we go. Defense gives a touchdown right back, right? Like, I mean, 86 yard touchdown pass, kickoff return for a touchdown. Like it's if the offense did well, the special teams or the defense failed. If the special teams or defense did well, the offense failed. And that's honestly, that's old school Washington football for the last 20 years or so. And it's not a good thing to see. I think the positive is, this is not the same old Washington team. You know what I mean? Right, and they have the people in the building they need to kick those habits to the curb.
Well, I think one of the big things that stands out to a lot of people on kind of a more zoomed in level is the Cliff per se, with Cliff Kingsbury and kind of the second half of the season struggles that his offenses have had going back to college football, quite honestly, not even just his NFL time. Is there anything specific that you're noticing? And I asked this question, David, when in reality, I've watched you talk about this, so I know that you have some of these answers. What are some of the specific things that you're noticing on offense that maybe you would like them to change going forward, or that they're not doing enough of that may have contributed to the offense sliding back a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with Jayden Daniels, right? At the end of the day, and it's the very last episode I did a Locked On Commanders before this one, we kind of went really deep into this, and it's not on Jayden Daniels in my opinion, because he's a rookie quarterback. Anytime you have a rookie quarterback, it's imperative that you have the right coaching staff in place, and you have coaches that understand, how am I going to maximize this rookie while also trying to develop him behind the scenes, understanding that real development doesn't take place until really after the end of the season, when players have time to decompress and kind of look back at everything that happened and really process those lessons. Jayden Daniels is a middle of the pocket to right side of the pocket player. He does not like to go to the left side. He doesn't like to throw to the left. He doesn't like to roll to the left. In the first 9 weeks of the season, it took the NFL a little while to really pick up on that, which is a little bit surprising, to be quite honest with you, because there's a lot of talented defensive coordinators out there. But it really started with the Chicago Bears, and that's actually week 8. So I should say it took 7 weeks. So the 8th week is when the Chicago Bears really became the first team that, if you go back on tape, you start watching, there's an overload to the left side of the defense. That's the right side of the offense. And what they're doing is they're trying to pressure Jayden Daniels up the middle, but they're also trying to contain him on the right side of the offensive formation and not allow him to get out and scramble. Or if he does roll out to try to make a pass and stay alive as a passer, make him incredibly uncomfortable. And what that's doing is putting more pressure on a rookie quarterback, which is leading to some inaccuracies. It's leading to some slow processes. And you've noticed in the last 3 or so games during this losing streak that he's holding the ball longer in the pocket. Not overall, his time to throw average has actually stayed rather consistent. In fact, week 11, the game against the Philadelphia Eagles was actually his shortest time to throw average of the season. So he's not holding the ball longer, but he's holding it in the pocket longer. He's not getting out of the pocket, which is where he does a lot of his damage.
Wow, that is such an interesting nugget that honestly, it would have been hard to notice that necessarily for me watching the tape, but I'm certain that Denard Wilson has noticed that now.
Yeah.
On the defensive side of the ball, I don't really know a lot. I mean, the Commanders aren't in the AFC. It's not a team that the Titans play often. You know, they change coaches with Dan Quinn, so they're doing different stuff on defense. I know Jonathan Allen has been out for the season, and he's a great player, but what is Washington doing? I know that they've had their struggles, and you look at like DVOA and stuff like that. They're, towards the bottom of the league, but they've also had some good moments. What is good and bad about this Commanders defense?
So what's bad about him is their run defense. Their run defense is near the bottom of the league and pretty much has been the entirety of the season. Their pass rush is better than their run defense certainly is. And sometimes those kind of things kind of go hand in hand. Guys who can win at the line of scrimmage are typically good in run defense or good in pass rushing. But this team really knows how to, one, get after the quarterback, but also to take advantage of quarterbacks that hold the ball. You mentioned Will Levis holding the ball a little bit. That's something that, the Washington Commanders defense is certainly going to be salivating over. However, they were also salivating over that against the Dallas Cowboys with a banged up offensive line and Cooper Rush, and came away with a very disappointing sack performance and just disappointing performance all over. So it's really, again, going to go back to some of that game planning. I think the secondary, what you're looking for there is a unit that's getting better and potentially could get better this weekend. And Marshawn Lattimore is active. He practiced on Wednesday. First time he's practiced with this team since he's been traded.
He's going to be back against the Titans. I'm a Titans fan. I know how this works. Hasn't played since the trade. He'll be back to take on Calvin Ridley 100%.
Well, the thing about it is, too, it's not that he was just out there practicing like in the stretch line where he's out there practicing doing tip drills, like launching himself into the air to get a ball at the high point. And again, when you're dealing with a hamstring injury, typically guys with hamstring injuries don't do that unless they're pretty confident with their hamstring. So, yeah, I think there's a good chance, speaking to this on Crossover Thursday, you can't guarantee anything, but I think there's a pretty good chance you see Marshawn Lattimore out there. And he's known as one of the most aggressive guys in the league. So if Will Levis comes out with a game plan behind him of get the ball out quickly to avoid this pass rush, Marshawn Lattimore is going to love it because Marshawn Lattimore is going to see him, like we just talked about, kind of overly plant to get ready to throw. And that long, plant to release time is going to bite Will Levis, in the rear. And I know we've seen some pick sixes come off of that, that behavior alone. So that's something that he's got to work on going forward. But, can he fix it for week 13? Typically, you don't expect that kind of thing. The Washington Commanders defense, secondary, pass defense rather, if you look at the stats, right, and this is why, and you know this, Tyler, but like for fans out there, like if you stat scout, this is why it can be dangerous because you look at it and you go, man, the secondary, what are you talking about? They're the 20th ranked pass defense in yards per play. So they're not that good. But you have to understand that early in the season, they were 32nd, and they were 32nd by a good amount. So the fact that they've kind of incrementally worked themselves up coming into last week's game against the Dallas Cowboys, they were 21st in the league in yards per pass. This week, they're 20th. So like they're getting better, and they're one of the better teams in preventing explosives, which of course, with Westbrook Akine and Calvin Ridley, Will Levis is going to love to try to hit those explosives. And even Chick, who I never even heard of until last week. You know what I mean? So, obviously they would love to hit some of those explosives against this Commanders defense. Not saying it can't happen because, obviously it can, but they've been really good at preventing those types of things.
Well, it'll be very interesting to watch because I know the Commanders love their cover 3. They've also played a surprising amount of cover 1, like cover 1 man, which, Dan Quinn, you think of like the old school Legion of Boom, cover 3, Seattle style defense. So that was interesting to see. For Titans fans, I would say related to the Detroit Lions game where the Lions played a ton of man coverage and cover 1. And I will say in that game, Calvin Ridley went crazy. So getting Marshawn Lattimore back, it'll be interesting to see what kind of matchup that turns into. But with that being said, we are going to kind of look to guess what might happen in this game, talk about some keys to victory, and which quarterback can have the better game will probably have a lot to do with it. It's Crossover Thursday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's Crossover Thursday is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets, period. In my opinion, the biggest reason for that is they have the best features in the industry. And now they have a brand new feature that makes Game Time even better called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff and shows you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I bought football, basketball, baseball, concert tickets on Game Time. And it's not just because Game Time Picks is great. They also have a panoramic view from your seat. So you literally know what you're going to be looking at when you sit down. Also, if you toggle on the feature in the app, you're going to get all-in prices. So the price that you see for your tickets is actually what your price is going to be at checkout, which is very hard to find. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, football fans, we're going to cap off today's crossover Thursday, Week 13 matchup, Tennessee Titans at the Washington Commanders. Once again, do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans and Locked On Commanders your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL, whether it be me in the mornings as the madman, whether it be the barber in the afternoons, Tony Wiggins. Locked On NFL is free. It's year-round. It's Monday through Friday, NFL content. You're not going to want to miss it. David obviously helps out with the Locked On NFL podcast as well. So definitely do appreciate you guys. We'll check out the Locked On NFL podcast. But with that being said, we do got to look into kind of some predictions. I don't want to say necessarily predicting what's going to happen, but some things that need to happen for both of these teams. As the away team, David, I will kick us off before. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. This is a Thursday show. Want to make sure that we say that. Everybody who celebrates out there, hope you have a happy and relaxing Thanksgiving. But for the Titans, for me, you have to run the football. You talked about it, that the Commanders have not been a great run defense. And I think the Titans already, with the way their offense is set up, everything is predicated on the run game. I think the Titans are going to have to be a little bit different in the run game than they were last week against the Texans. Something I broke down on my Tic Tac Titans film channel on Wednesday, the way the Titans attack the aggressiveness. I think the Commanders are going to be a much more disciplined defensive line, and you're going to get yourself in trouble if you don't run the football and put yourself in those third and long situations where the Commanders can clamp down with their tight man coverage and get the pass rushers loose. So the Titans absolutely have to run the football here. And honestly, they've been pretty good at running the football this year. So that might be a good matchup for the Titans. I also think stopping Terry McLaurin is going to be clear. Now, David, I don't mean to be disrespectful to some of the other options that the Commanders have, like, Daimi Brown or Zach Ertz. But the reality is I don't think that the Commanders have a great set of skill position players outside of Terry McLaurin. So if you let Terry McLaurin beat you, you are absolutely going to lose. Now, you may still lose even with Terry McLaurin not going off, but you give yourself a much better chance of winning if you hold Terry McLaurin down and force sort of the other guys to do it. I don't want to completely neglect Jayden Daniels here either. So my third key to victory, other than slowing down Terry McLaurin and running the football, my third key to victory here is containing Jayden Daniels. The Titans have really struggled with mobility at the quarterback position, whether it be Drake May, whether it be Josh Allen running around, like even Justin Herbert was able to make some plays. Sam Darnold, who's not a super mobile quarterback, he looked like Michael Vick and Joe Burrow the way he was navigating in the pocket. I know that's a weird to use those two names at the same time, but if you know ball, you know Joe Burrow is a Jedi in the pocket moving around. But the Titans have really struggled with mobility. They've really struggled with quarterbacks to actually finish their sack opportunities and get them to the ground. Jayden Daniels is by far the best mobile threat that the Titans have faced at the quarterback position. I'm taking the over on Jayden Daniels' rushing yards in this game. I think he's going to give the Titans fits, and if they allow that to beat them, they have no chance to win the game. So run the football, contain Terry McLaurin, contain Jayden Daniels in the run game, and the Titans should have a good shot to get their second win in a row.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, if they can do those three things, you're absolutely correct. They can certainly make this thing more of a game than most people would have thought it would be a month ago, right? You go back to like October 25th and say, oh, this Titans game here in 3 or 4 weeks, how's that going to go? And everybody's like, the Commanders are going to get that one, no problem. Now the way that things are going, however, that's not the case. And one of those things that's happening is that the Washington Commanders offense is leaving the defense out there. Washington Commanders offense is not giving the defense enough of a break and leaving the defense out there far too long because they're losing the time of possession battle. And Tyler, the Washington Commanders are 1-4 in games this year where they're losing the time of possession battle. And obviously, time of possession correlated to wins is kind of a no-duh stat connection, right? Yeah. But there's a difference between teams that want to win the time of possession to win games, and there's teams that need to win the time of possession to win games. This team needs to win the time of possession. That one win, Chicago Bears, which they should have lost, right? Like in the grand scheme of everything, without a Tyreek Stevenson on the field, they should have lost that game. So really, this team should be 0-5 in games where they don't win the time of possession battle. And the way that you do that, if you're the defense, because we've gone weeks now where we're kind of saying, okay, offense needs to string together drives. How can we get the offense to get more first downs and do all this other stuff? And yeah, that's absolutely so important. But from a content standpoint, now I need to tell listeners, this defense needs to force 3 and outs. That's what needs to happen. Is this defense now has to kind of say, not only is it our job to keep the score as low as possible for as long as possible, it's our job to now get ourselves off the field. And obviously you want to do that anyway, but give ourselves the break that we need is probably the better way to say that. But the Tennessee Titans, I mean, I know they're not ranked really high in like first downs per game. I think against the Minnesota Vikings, they only had 11 first downs, but at the same time, they've only gone 3 and out like 6 times over the past 3 games. So this isn't a team that goes 3 and out all that often. So the Washington Commanders need to come out here and maybe get 4 3 and outs in this one game alone, so that if this offense still needs some time to kind of make things happen, they can have their time to rest on the sideline while that's all happening. The next one's get Jayden Daniels right. You want to stop Terry McLaurin. Right now, the Washington Commanders are doing a lot of that on their own by lining him up on the left side of the formation, and Jayden Daniels is throwing about 70% of his passes to the right side of the formation. Now, doesn't mean Terry can't run from the left to the right? But there's a big deficiency in how this quarterback likes to play, what side of the field he likes to execute on, and where his number one receiver is a lot. Need to see Cliff Kingsbury get that correct, and that's part of getting Jayden Daniels right. Because guess what? If Terry McLaurin is running past an overloaded left side of the defense and Jayden Daniels can throw over that blitz or over that overloaded rush, maybe things are going to go a little bit better. You force that defense to back off a little bit. Then it opens up the field a little bit more for guys like Noah Brown, Zach Ertz, so on and so forth. And then finally, get Ben Sinnott used in more of a Kyle Juszczyk role. Ben Sinnott, rookie tight end, when he was drafted out of Kansas State, Adam Peters, who came from the San Francisco 49ers, said, this is our Kyle Juszczyk. That's what we see in Ben Sinnott. Well, guess what? When you've seen Ben Sinnott have the opportunities to get his Juszczyk on, he's done really well. Go back to that rushing touchdown Jayden Daniels had against the Cowboys in the beginning of the second half. Kyle Juszczyk is the guy laying the lumber on a Dallas Cowboys defender to free Jayden Daniels up to get into that end zone, ironically, on the left side of the offensive formation. Do more of that. You mentioned the Los Angeles Chargers game, Tyler, and I actually studied that offense against the Titans defense specifically for this matchup. So I'm really glad that we're on the same page there. And what did the Los Angeles Chargers do? Pretty much every time they ran between the tackles, definitely every time they ran between the guards, they used a fullback. And it was actually kind of funny to me because there was really no trickeration to it. If there was a fullback on the field, the Chargers were running between the tackles. And they said, it's coming, stop it. And the
Titans like to play a nickel.
Stop it at all.
That makes it even more difficult when you have bigger bodies coming at you.
And you have Ben Sinnott, who, again, in the Juszczyk mold, is also a receiver. So if you go play action or if you do a chip release or whatever it is, you have a receiving option in Ben Sinnott as well. So you also mentioned the Detroit Lions. That's actually, I'm really happy you did that too, because I actually watched the Detroit Lions defense against this Tennessee Titans offense. That information that I got from there is actually coming out in my Friday episode. So Commanders fans will get to do that. But yeah, we're clearly on the same page on which teams kind of present some of the better options against the Tennessee Titans team. And again, the thing you want the Commanders to do better than the Detroit Lions did, even though they were effective in some other areas, is stop the explosive passes.
Yeah, 100%. The Titans did a good job of getting Calvin Ridley going with the man coverage because he's so fast. It's just difficult to stay with him one-on-one, but will be very interesting to see that. I think you're saying Terry McLaurin getting across the field. The Titans run a lot of cover 4 man where they're manned on the outside, and then their safeties are playing that exchange cover 4 over the middle to stop those crossing routes. So this is going to be an excellent schematic battle, David. One of the best crossovers I've done all year. It goes without saying, ball. But with that being said, that's going to do it for us today on this Crossover Thursday. Again, happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there if you celebrate. But I am Tyler Rowland, host of the Locked On Titans podcast for David Harrison from Locked On Commanders. Thank you so much for tuning in. Everybody, have a good Thanksgiving once again. Stay safe out there and make sure that you tune in on Friday and get ready for this excellent game coming on Sunday.